Let's get to the Morgan Frost of it all, because goddamn, I love this conversation.
I love
it's so
talking
fun.
about him.
He's
my favorite player.
I'm acting as if I'm upset about it, but it's the decision to sit. Has he been scoring? No. In the 16 games without Noah Cates, he has 7 points. This was your opportunity. You're not taking advantage of it. I'm disappointed for you.
He's been okay, though. It's like he's been bad.
No, he has been fine.
Yeah.
But it's clear that he has to be more than fine.
He needed to be the guy who he was last. And I mean, like, he missed 1 game last season.
Yeah.
He came in this year having done what he did in the final 55 games, and the coach was like, yeah, we'll see. And the we'll see is 11 scratchings in the first half of the season. Like, he's on pace to miss 22 games. That's wild to me. He hasn't stepped up, you would say.
I would agree with that.
He's been fine for a lot of it. Some people believe his trip was bad. Other people believe it was the same as everyone else's, and that's why they weren't good on the trip. But obviously, it's John Tortorella. If there's someone to blame, it's like, well, I have a list of 5 guys. One of them's Frost. Yep.
Yeah, he's the guy. Like, it's his fault.
What is going on with the Morgan Frost situation?
I just think that's what it boils down to, is that it seems like every time the Flyers are struggling, every time the Flyers go through a rough patch, John Tortorella just brings out his in case of emergency bench Frost button. Like, it's his go-to. And I talked about this on Twitter yesterday I think it was before the game, where what it really boils down to, and this is the key to it all, he doesn't see Morgan Frost as essential to this lineup. And we've even talked about this, about the fact that the Flyers have played some really, really good stretches with Morgan Frost benched. And it's one of the reasons why it's hard to get too angry at him being scratched, because it's not like the team falls off a cliff when he's not playing. They usually play pretty decent, pretty much the exact same way they play with him in. And like, compare him to a guy like Lawton, who we all agree is not having that great of a year. In spite of the fact that Lawton is not having that great of a year, especially by his standards, he is still on the top shorthanded goal duo with Travis Konechny. He still is the only guy wearing an A. He gives them a reason, aside from point production, to keep him in the lineup. You have even a guy like Ryan Poehling, also a penalty kill guy, a penalty kill stalwart. There are guys on this team that maybe you could point to and say they should be benched. Bobby Brink, yeah, he's an offense guy like Frost, but he's also a rookie. So they're going to prioritize his development more than a guy who's been in the league for a few years. They look at Morgan Frost, I think, John Tortorella especially, looks at Morgan Frost as the easiest guy to pull out of the lineup when he wants to send a message, because it doesn't have as big of an impact on the rest of the lineup as pulling out a guy like Scott Lawton would. The only real impact it has is on the power play, but Morgan Frost can't score on the power play anyway, so who gives a crap?
Nobody.
I just think that he looks at Frost as the easiest guy to pull out of the lineup when he wants to send a message. He doesn't particularly love Morgan Frost on the whole, so it's just easy, and he goes to press that easy button, which is the bench Morgan Frost. I think that's really what it boils down to when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it.
That's all well and good. Like I said, I don't even think it matters if Morgan Frost turns out somewhere else, because it's never going to happen here. The guy who seems to have at least half the say, if not more, does not like him, so it doesn't matter. He's not going to make it here. That said, in a situation like last night, the team is worse without Morgan.
Yes.
And again, don't believe in him. Think he's probably just going to be a guy, and if he figures it out somewhere else, I was wrong. Tip of the cap. The team in a situation last night is worse without Morgan Frost because they replaced him with nobody. They said having no one is better than having Morgan Frost.
Gardner has 4 points, Bill.
In the AHL.
That's not
in the AHL.
On a team that seems to have a bunch of scorers, they went with the guy who isn't one of them. Yeah. This is just what baffles me about the decision. You made the team worse on purpose. Maybe this is all part of the big culture building scheme, but I don't see how when you've been like, we're going to be the team that works hard. We don't tank. That's not what we do. This is akin to that. It's not, we're going to put out a bad lineup on purpose. It is, though, we're going to make this as hard as possible for no reason other than I'm mad. And I'm mad, so I'm going to take it out on Morgan Frost, even though everyone has sucked. Like Nick Delorier back in the lineup, but doesn't play in the third period. Why'd you play him?
Yeah.
I
Why
totally
is
agree
Nick
with that.
Delorier more important against the Blue Jackets, who in
Yeah.
the first half of this game seemed more than happy to lose it 3-1?
Yeah.
They would have been very pleased with themselves if they lost. Nothing happened in the first 35 minutes of this game.
It was very boring.
It was just back and forth. It was a free skate out there. You didn't need Nick Delorier in the lineup, but he's got to play.
Yeah.
Except until it gets to the third period, and then no.
Yeah, when you need good hockey players.
The whole thing is just, it makes no sense to me. And he can explain it in any way, and maybe I'll be wrong in a couple of weeks when Cam Atkinson has another 8 goals in 15 games like he did to start the season, and maybe Morgan Frost turns it up, because that's what we heard about Morgan Frost today. He actually went to the coach.
This, I think, is maybe the most positive thing that came out of this. And I am still of the belief that this is going down the path of Morgan Frost getting moved, not necessarily at the trade deadline, but like in the offseason, that both sides are just going to agree that, hey, this just ain't going to work. However, if it does actually work and Morgan Frost, by some, infinitesimal chance, is still on this team and a key member of this team 5-6 years down the road, I could easily see us point to this particular day as the start of the turnaround, of the turning point. We've talked about trying to figure out like what doesn't Torts like about Morgan Frost. What is it? Is it the fact that he's not that physical? Probably. That's probably part of it.
He's been more physical lately.
Is it the fact that he isn't that great defensively? Probably part of it in the beginning. I do think he's gotten better defensively. The numbers have gotten better. He seems like a more detail-oriented player this year than he was last year in his own zone. He's never going to be a Selke guy. Like, sorry, that's just not who he is. But he's going to be a better defensive player than he was 2 years ago, and that's good. So what is it? What ticks Torts off so much about Morgan Frost? And I think we might have gotten a hint as to what it was today.
So annoying.
But it's so Torts.
I know.
I think he has long viewed Morgan Frost as something of a pushover who doesn't have the kind of pushback that he wants out of a player, that he just doesn't have that fire in the belly. And that's why today was interesting, because leading up to the scratch, John Tortorella said, because Morgan Frost, we wanted to talk to Morgan Frost. He kind of ducked out while we were talking to Cam Atkinson. We asked to talk to him. He apparently got out of the facility. He didn't want to talk to the media. You know what? That's fine. Whatever. He's ticked off. It's all good. But John Tortorella gave us some really interesting and important context here. So Tortorella said that he had 2 conversations with Frost before the benching. They had one general conversation, I think probably about Torts' and the coaching staff's general dissatisfaction with Frost on the plane ride back from Edmonton, on the plane ride back from the trip. And then, because they canceled morning skate on Thursday, he couldn't have a conversation with him in person, so he called him on the phone and he gave his specific reasons as to why Morgan Frost was not playing on Thursday. Apparently, at some point this morning, Morgan Frost basically marched into Torts' office and said, "We need to talk more." And here's the quote. "I was thrilled that he came in and wanted to talk and gave me some of his thoughts and not agreeing, essentially, with the decision to scratch him. This is a huge step for me with Frosty, is him coming in and saying, you know what, this is what I think. It's so important that players do that. It creates a bit of a path for him and I as we try to go through this." Like, I really think that Torts has been like almost like waiting for Frost to do this, and you can roll your eyes, but this is John Tortorella.
I know.
This is what he wants out of guys.
Take your shirt off and fight me, and then you can play. Like,
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yes.
That's who he is.
And it's like, it's just so
That's-
stupid. And
But that's Torts.
I know.